So I want you to imagine for a minute, will you just go with me for a second? And I want you to pretend like you have never heard or seen the Grand Canyon. And I, as your friend, come to you and say, you have got to see the Grand Canyon. Will you come with me? We get to the Grand Canyon and it is pitch black. I mean, the kind of night where there is no moon and you can't see your hand in front of your face. And you're like, I'm sorry, what's the big deal about this? And I say, just wait till you see it. It is magnificent. And so you stand looking into the darkness and thinking, I don't understand what the big deal is, until the sun starts to peek up over the horizon, and just faintly, you start to see the outline of the Grand Canyon. And the more it rises and the more the light shines into that canyon, the more you are awed. You stand in wonder of what the Grand Canyon is. Here's what's true. Light does not create, meaning the reason that the Grand Canyon is there and is beautiful and wonderful is not because light created it. Light reveals. So light is meant to reveal what already exists and what already is true. So I hope you'll hang with me again here, because we're going to make a turn and we're going to look at 2 Corinthians 4. So he says this, for God who said, let light shine out of darkness. Paul saying, remember folks, we're going to remember that God spoke and the universe existed. For our solar system, he spoke and the sun came into being with all of its wonder and glory and power that brought light to us. He spoke. That's the kind of power that our God has. He reminds us of that before he says these words. Also, made his light shine in our hearts. The same power that spoke and the sun existed is the same power that spoke if we are in Christ, and light flooded our hearts. And the question begs as well, what did this light do in our hearts? Here's what he says. To give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. That's a mouthful. So let's think about that for a second. If we were to go back to the Grand Canyon and think about that, what that really would look like and feel like here on Earth, and we're there and the sun rises up and shows us the magnificence of the Grand Canyon. In the same way, Paul says, spiritually, what happens is the face of Christ in all of its radiance and glory. When we accept that, when he is ours, when we say yes in full surrender, it is like his face rises like the sun. And it spreads out over to reveal, it's not creating, it's revealing what is already true. And that revelation is to see him for who he is. This is what that light does. It reveals who God is in our lives. And it is magnificent. But here's what gets interesting, is that Paul paints that picture of the glory and grandeur of God, but he says, but we have this treasure, this light, this gospel in jars of clay, broken, weak, drop it and the thing shatters, temporary shells. You know what's interesting that I don't like about this is that if you think about a jar that does not have any cracks and is completely whole and is made of clay, and there is a light on the inside of it, it's not going to have the same shining power. It'll have some will come out the top of it, but it does not have the same power as when the jar has a bunch of cracks in it. When it is cracked and broken in spots, then that powerful light that's on the inside bursts out of that pot, out of that jar of clay, and it's no longer just a simple jar of clay. It radiates with the beauty and splendor and glory of who God is. How do we not lose heart? Oh, friends, when we lay our eyes on that treasure and not on the cracks. And not only that, here's what's so bizarre. The cracks actually reveal more of his power, more of his splendor, more of his goodness, more of his grace as it bursts through and shines through this simple jar of clay. It is mind blowing.